Okay, in this session, we will look at the Responsa from the 15th century on. The first one is by Rabbi Moshe Trani, originally from Salonika. The family is named after the city Trani in Italy. He was born in Salonika, then moved to Turkey, and then to Safed in Israel. Lived in from 1500 to 1580. His teshuvah, his question, which is in part 2, number 27 of his responsa, shows us the situations of women who were leading their own businesses and entering partnerships, etc. The question is this: a man, Reuven is a generic name, always in the response. That's Reuven and Shimon. Reuven entered a partnership with the widow of Shimon in performing a certain craft that is known only to them, and Reuven committed to not working in this craft with anyone, not a Jew or a non-Jew, within a certain perimeter, and she also made the same commitment. So here we speak about the secrets of the trade. They have maybe they were goldsmiths or something of the like. They have artisanal knowledge, and they made the commitment to each other. They're not going to share it with other people. However, they weren't able to get along, and Reuven agreed to or decided to split his partnership with the widow of Shimon, and now the widow of Shimon presses charges against Reuven based on the document that he is not allowed to perform this work, to do this craft with anyone else, unless she is present. So other people will not learn it, and then it will cause them losses when the secrets of the trades will be revealed. Reuven argues that because since they split the partnership completely, then he cannot be forced to go back and be a partner with her. The answer doesn't really matter. What matters is this kind of situation of reality of a woman, a widow, running a business, entering partnerships, writing deeds, documents, pressing charges against men, demanding basically that even though they're not partners, if he teaches it to someone, she should be there. The next Shuvah we're going to look at was written by Rabbi Yehuda Kassin of Aleppo, 18th century. He lived from between 1708 to 1784. This is in his book called Mahane Yehuda, and that is a teshuvah that illustrates the tension that existed in Aleppo because of the influx of exiles from Spain and their descendants. They were called in general Señores Francos, the European gentlemen. Franco was a general name for people from outside the Middle East, so Señores Francos. And they had different customs and practices that were not always accepted by the local people of Aleppo, such as the women would travel, would go outside, and here this is what he writes. There were certain decrees or regulations agreed on by the community, and the Francos would not adhere to them. Remember that we read in the books of Musar, Moral Values and Ethics by Rabbi Avraham Dayan and Rabbi Avraham Antebi, both from Aleppo, both Rabbi Dayan and Rabbi Antebi were complaining of what they considered to be an immodest behavior in Aleppo, and that is part of it, the tension between the Francos and the local people of Aleppo. So Rabbi Kassin writes here that one of the regulations by the rabbi were that the arus, that is the man who was engaged, betrothed, but arus, cannot enter his father-in-law's house min ha'agaf ve'lifnim, into the inner wing. Their houses were built as courtyards, usually with the facade facing the street, showing a dilapidated house, or not that of a wealthy family, but inside the courts of Aleppo were were quite elaborate, with a nice fountain in the middle and several rooms, a roomy a hall, and the arus was maybe allowed to enter only the courtyard and not into the house itself. But although that has been a regulation made by the rabbis, hakahazina da'arusin va'arusot shel hasignores francos darim bevayit ahad ve'ochlim ve'shotim yahad. The men and women who are engaged among the francos live in the same house and eat and drink together. And the rabbi said nothing. And if the rabbi would come and claim that he gave special permission to the francos, why would he give them a permission and not the other people in the community? And he says, Rabbi Kazin says that he himself had a situation where his nephew, who lost both his parents, lived in his sister's house, and he had nowhere to live at except for his sister's house. And the husband of that sister, meaning the brother-in-law of that orphan, had a younger sister whom he wanted to engage to that orphan boy. And and nothing was done. No official steps were taken. It was only the plan of the brother-in-law to have his nephew, the orphan, marry his own younger sister when the time will come. And Rabbi Kassin says that he decided to be strict and went to ask the rabbi, the head of the community, to ask if it is okay for the orphan to remain in his sister's house, and he did not give permission under any circumstances. So Rabbi Kassin's conclusion is that the rabbi was very strict with the takana, with the decree of not letting an engaged man and woman live in the same house, even in a situation like that of an orphan who has no relatives, nowhere to live, and there's no official engagement. So if this is how he treats the people of Aleppo, the fact that the Francos do live together, it's not because they got permission from the rabbis, but rather they live on their own. So it's interesting to see that tension, social tension between different segments of the community, but also to understand the kind of control that the rabbis had over the community in determining how to live their lives, the social life, and the separation between the genders. In another response from Rabbi Avraham Antabi, the same author of the book Chokhmah Musar, actually it's in the book Chokhmah Musar, but towards the end in the halacha part, an interesting halacha that is not followed today in the Aleppo community. He says, "Im ba'u hanashim levarech al lulav ve'al hashofar hareshut be'adam, ken katvu acharonim b'shemri sheken yeshivu min hashamayim." Just like the Rashba, Rabbi Avraham Antabi says that if women want to say bracha for the lulav or for the shofar, they are allowed to, and this is how it is written in the words of the acharonim. This is in page 296 of the book Chokhmah Musar, and in page 298, we're moving to another section called Hukei Nashim, the laws of women, and here again we run into the situation of Moredet. Reuven nishba li'ishto shelo yisa isha acheret aleh. Reuven made an oath to his wife in the ketubah. That is, in some ketubot it is still included, that the husband swears that he will not marry another wife, he will not practice bigamy, and he promised her that he will follow that practice, he will not marry another woman, although bigamy was practiced in Aleppo at the time. Not common, but practiced. And she rebelled against him. She put herself in this category of moredet that we spoke about before, meaning that she refuses to have sexual relationship with him. Question is, can he marry someone else, or without her permission, or does he need to nullify his vow? Or, and here we see that it's maybe a theoretical question. If they lived for 10 years and she did not give birth and she does not want to let him marry another woman, what should he do? He answers the core of the matter is that he must appease her and convince her. And if she is not appeased, if she does not want to listen to him, we warn her. And if she still is rebellious, they can nullify his vow and he can marry another woman, even though he took the oath in her honor, leda'ata letu'alta, but meaning he did it in order for her to benefit and for her to be happy, but he did not take the oath in a way that will cause him to lose the mitzvah of Priyah Verivah, or be fruitful and procreate and transgress the Torah. And so is the halacha of with one who lived for 10 years with his wife and had no children. And remember that we reviewed some legislation that think that it's mandatory for a couple to divorce after 10 years, and that there are others who say that it's just an option and only if both of them agree on that, but the husband cannot force the wife. In page 303 in the same book, Chumah Musar, he speaks about one who uses physical and verbal violence towards his wife. He raises his hand on her and he shames her publicly. So the answer of Rabbi Avraham Antabi is he is being put under excommunication, that if he uses violence again, he will be banished from the community. If he changed his mind, fine, and if not, he is being denounced as an excommunicated person that people do not talk to and do not do business with. He is denied all the honors in the Bet Knesset, etc. If he changes his mind, fine, and if not, he will be punished. We could even ask the non-Jewish law authorities to punish him, to physically punish him, and to put him in jail. And in order to avoid the problem of forced get, the rabbis agree that if a non-Jewish entity forced a man to give a get, it is not a valid divorce. That was in the base of the decree of the Gaonim, who decided to let a moredet, to let a woman who files for a divorce, to get a divorce without delay. And he says we don't tell him to, in this process, after he's being handed over to the authorities to physically punish him and imprison him, we don't remind him that he has to divorce his wife, because we want him to do it on his own free will. So Rabbi Antabi says that this is what should be done, but it cannot be forced by the non-Jews to divorce, either by excommunication or physical punishment. So we still see here some progress towards the woman. They do care about her. In page 312, he speaks about a woman, an honorable woman of an elevated status, who got into a situation where she had to take an oath in Bedin, and the question is whether she should be forced to come to Bedin and take the oath there, or should the messenger of Bedin go to her house and do the teshuvah, do the shuvah there. And the answer is interesting. He says, "Le'inyan halacha kofin ota lelech Bedin." Theoretically, she should be forced to go to Bedin, but in practice, but in practice, a woman is not being brought to Bedin because it's disrespectful to her. Ela shulchina Bedin, but rather the Bedin send a messenger if they have someone available, but they would not appoint someone special. But we see that they do care about her status, and they don't want to put her in a situation that would be embarrassing to her. In page 319, Rabbi Avraham Antabi speaks about a couple who wants to go to Eretz Yisrael, either the husband or the wife. Just as we saw previously, this is from the other teshuvah that spoke about going to Israel was from the 12th century. This is in the much later, in the 18th century. Rabbi Avraham Antabi lived from 1765 to 1858, so he's mid 18th to mid 19th century. and he speaks about a woman who wants to do aliyah, she wants to go to Eretz Israel, and the husband does not want to go with her, and he does not want to cover the expenses of the journey. She says that she has enough from what she brought with her, and as they get married, and he says, "I will not let you use it because I'm responsible for keeping those possessions, and if there be any losses or damages, I will have to pay them back." And the answer that Rabbi Avraham Antabi provides is that although we have a ruling that a woman who wants to go to Eretz Israel and the husband refuses, he must give her a divorce and let her go free and to pay her ketubah, we don't follow this halakha today because any woman who would want to get divorced will claim that she wants to go to Eretz Israel. Here we see again this process of deterioration where women had some rights, but they were taken away from them based on feeble arguments. The rabbi said that a woman who wants to go to Eretz Israel and the husband refuses is allowed to do so, and she will get the full reimbursement of the ketubah. But later generations decided that gives her too much power because she could file for a divorce whenever she wants, and maybe she's tricking us and she's not going to go to Eretz Israel. Or she's going to go there and marry whomever she wants, so they denied her this possibility. However, if she says that she's willing to go without taking a divorce, meaning that she will not be able to marry anyone in Israel, and also she will spend all the money needed for the journey, and also she will denounce his responsibility over the possessions, then he could go. So, like in other situations where we see legislation for women, it is a victory in a way, but it comes at a very, very hefty price. And then finally, in the same page, in 319, Rabbi Avraham Antabi writes of a case where a man swore to his wife when he got married that he will never separate her from her mother and brother, but now he wants to do aliyah and go to Eretz Israel. Can she prevent him from going because he swore to her that she will stay with her family? The answer is that she could really prevent him from doing that, even if he didn't take an oath. If he didn't take an oath, he cannot do that because she has control. However, if we find that there's no cheating here, meaning he's being honest and transparent, and he has an ability to work there and make money, what he cannot do in Aleppo, she's being forced to go with him. And it says, but still, we've seen several cases of men who claim that they want to go to Eretz Israel, and the wives refused. The men divorced their wives and did not pay them ketubah, as is the law. And then the men came back to Aleppo. So he says, I forced one of them to pay back the ketubah or to remarry his wife. So we have those situations on both sides. However, when we suspect the woman of being tricky, the only way for her to get out of it is to lose all of her rights. When we suspect the man of being tricky, he has to bring evidence that he's not, and then we trust him. From here, we're going to move to Morocco. The Shuvah from a little later, Rabbi Rafael Masoud ibn Muha lived in Morocco between 1779 and 1874, so late 18th to late 19th century, almost 100 years old. He was when he passed away. In his book Pardes Rimonim, he speaks about a man who does not treat his wife properly. His language is very flowery. I'm going to translate it directly to English. This is in the scanned document on page 80 in Pardes Rimonim. The original book, it's Halek Even Aizer, Siman Tet, chapter 9. He says, he writes to another rabbi and he says, you, the rabbi, must rebuke the community. They should all be moved and touched and rise to action, hearing how that of that man who mistreated both his wives, the first and the second, and that man should be punished, and he caused so much suffering to his wife, who cannot take that suffering. tzarich lichtov alav merorot. We must write letters, bitter letters, and rebuke him and convince him to do teshuvah. Va'isha aluva bedina ma pish'a ma chatata. See how he identifies with the woman. He says, "This poor woman, what has she done? What is her sin that he brought upon her with his terrible actions?" She almost felt that she's about to die, and lo matzah Yonah manuach, the dove was not able to find a place to rest. He's taking this verse from the story of Yonah, of the flood and Noah, and he says uleonsa asta moredet, because he brought her to this point, she had to rebel against him. He says, to me, she is not a rebel, and she deserves her ketubah, because whatever she did because of the suffering she had under the behavior of that man, who is audacious, who is a wicked man. Do we think that any wicked man can do to his wife whatever he wants? And do we think that when the women cannot take the torture and the suffering, they should flee to another city, to a city of refuge, in order to find to rest from the suffering and torturing, to become a moredet? Are we going to call her a rebel and add an agony to her agony and a suffering to her suffering, to make this husband who is a sinner, to make him gain from his actions? And especially since we know that this is how we behave with the first wife and the second wife, and if we don't hold him accountable for his actions, he's going to do the same to his third wife. Then now I'm in line 20 in the Teshuvah. It says, this man must be excommunicated for whatever he did and for the future, to make sure that he would never return to his evil actions, and he must be sworn by the most powerful oaths that he will never return to behave that way. And he should also accept upon himself, this is a condition that Rabbi Masoudi ben Muha built into the document, that even when he states that he does teshuvah and he repents, it must be built into the document that if the woman comes and says that he still behaves in the same manner, she will be trustworthy. Not only to be, it says, he accepts her testimony as that of two kosher witnesses, to pay her ketubah, to give the divorce, and he will be excommunicated. The rabbi really identifies with the woman here. He says, she's like a lamb being brought to the slaughterhouse, and she rebelled against him because the way he treats her is inhumane. And he brings several proofs and quotes from the Ramah, from other, from Rabbi Moshe Isserlis, from the Rosh, and other rabbis, actually from the Ashkenazi tradition. But he really identifies with her, and he says, "En lecha rama'ut gdola mizo sherima ota ad shenitratzet linaseh lo." He says, if the second woman would have known what he did to the first wife, she would definitely not marry him. And he cheated her and tricked her, didn't tell her of his true nature, and he became oyev ve'ari toref ve'dores. He became an enemy, he became a predator, a predatory animal. And he says, until he gives her ketubah and a divorce, הרי הוא מוחרם ומובדל מעדת ישראל כל ימיו עד שיקבל עליו את הדין. He will be banished and excommunicated from the people of Israel until he accepts the law, because one who raises his hand against his friend is cursed. So we see that Rabbi Masoudi ben Muha uses very harsh language regarding that man. There's no, in his mind, there's no forgiveness to this kind of behavior, and that is unfortunate. We don't see that same kind of response or attitude from the rabbis in Orthodox courts today, including the case that I mentioned from the Bedin Rabbani in Yerushalayim, that until the husband pulled the gun and threatened his wife, they did not help her in getting a divorce. The next Shuvah was written by Rabbi Yitzhak Abu Afia in his Responsa Penei Yitzhak. He was born in Jerusalem, but also lived in Tiberias and Damascus from 1824 to 1910, mostly 19th century and early 20th century. And he speaks here about the validity of the testimony of a certain man, and he speaks. This is about what is happening in Damascus, the society and the situation of a cosmopolitan city. He speaks about modesty, etc. And he says, "Hine העד הזה מלאכתו לנגן עם שאר האנשים המנגנים בתוף ובכינור, בשמחות וגיל בבתי בני ברית ושאינם בני ברית." That witness is a musician, and he plays with the bands and with joy and happiness in the houses of Jews and non-Jews. And then he connected with, joined forces with those wicked women, the Egyptians and the Hebrew, meaning Egyptians and non-Jewish and Jewish. This is based on a pasuk in Shemot. And so those women play in front of men, ki hatzufotem, they are audacious. ואין ידנו תקיפה עליהם למונעם מכוח החירות שניתן להם בעוונותינו הרבים. It says we cannot prevent them from doing that because they are independent. So here the rabbis have to confront the situation of independent women. They are entertainers. I'm not saying that the situation maybe was not recommended. We know also that in Damascus the rabbis had to fight a phenomenon of prostitution, and maybe he refers to that. But this is something that the rabbis were trying to prevent and were not able. He says we made an exclamation under the threat of excommunication that no musician is allowed to play with the girls and the women who play, and whoever does that is muhram minudeh, is going to be excommunicated. This just shows us, like I said, a glimpse of the society of the time, but also the dilemma of the rabbis trying to deal with more independence of women. And if they chose a certain profession, in many cases it was because no other choice was left for them. Our next shuvah is going to be from the book Yisamach Lev by Rabbi Shalom Moshe Hai Gagin, who lived in Jerusalem in the 19th century, 1832 to 1883. Rabbi Gagin also traveled. He was in North Africa, in France, and in Italy. And he says, and this is also something that we saw in the Musar books of Rabbi Antebi and Rabbi Dayan. He says, בעיר תהילה דמשק יגן עליה אלוהים, נהגו רוב הנשים ללבוש סורס כאלו לאבנט וכמעט כולה. He says, in our city, most women dress with the most precious fabrics, and the custom of the city is שהנשים יוצאות לשוק לקנות לעצמן ענייני מלבושים כאשר יערב להם. The women go to the market themselves, they buy whatever they want as they wish, not through their husbands. והן נוסעות ונותנות בערכים יותר מהאנשים. And they are the ones who negotiate regarding the value and the price to pay for the garments more than the men. Even the most respectful women do that. He sees it as a plague, Zoe Makat Medina. But his conclusion is that they know how to conduct business and what is the value of materials. So all those teshuvot from the 15th century on show us a changing reality, the globalization, also as an impact of colonialism and the British Empire spreading into these parts, even though it was under the control of the Ottoman Empire. We're going to conclude with a segment from a book by Menachem Elon, who used to be a Supreme Court judge in Israel. And in his book, Ma'amad Aisha, the status of women, he speaks about, at the end, about the continued creativity and innovation among Moroccan rabbis in the 20th century. In general, he says there that European rabbis, Ashkenaz rabbis, were paralyzed by emancipation and enlightenment. They were afraid of the threat that those movements presented to them, and as a result, they just stopped creating new halachot, new laws. Meanwhile, in Morocco, this process continued and was very creative. And one of the important discussions that he quotes here is that of Yerushat Abat. According to the Torah, women do not inherit their fathers. Daughters do not inherit their fathers if they are men, unless the only case in which a woman can inherit her father is if she is the only heir, or if all the descendants are women. Meaning, if someone has only daughters, then it will be shared equally among the daughters. But if he has sons and daughters, the sons receive the inheritance, and the women only get alimony or a certain provision until they get married. And when they get married, they're supposed to get under the custody of the husband. So in mid 20th century, 1952, Rabbi Michael Ankawa opened the argument saying the following: Batar de nikitna reshuta v'hormenta. Following the process of accepting your permission and your authorization, באתי להציע לפני רום מעלתכם מעניין אשר רוח הזמן החלה לפעמו בלב העם והוא עניין ירושת הבת. He said, I want to present to you a matter that depends on time. This is the new winds. The winds of the new times are blowing, and the people ask about Yerushat Habat, about the entitlement of a daughter to her father's inheritance. Rabim omrim mimaskilei ha'am. Many of the scholars say that lehashvot zechuyot hanashim ka'anashim. We must give women the same status as men. Be'anyanim ha'mat'imim al pi datenu ha'kedusha, within the parameters of the Torah, לפי המצב המחודש בעולם הכללי. But we have to follow the developments in the general world, in the non-Jewish world. ובאחת מהזכויות, and one of those rights that women claim, נשים אומרות, תנה לנו אחוזה. The women say, please give us our inheritance. והגם שתורתנו הקדושה מקובלת עלינו בכל לב ובכל נפש, סילקה אותנו מהירושה במקום זכר. Even though the women say that, even though the Torah, which we respect and cherish, has drove us away from getting any part of the inheritance, we know that the Bedin has the authority to act according to the time, and הרשות לחכמי הדור לתקן בענייני הממון. It is the authority and the mandate of the rabbis to make decrees in what has to do with monetary issues. They are the ones who control all the funds of the whole people, and they are allowed to transfer funds from one person to another under the predicts of halacha. And she says, the women say that לתקן בענייני הממון אשר יכשר לעשות. They have to do decrees regarding monetary issues in the appropriate way, in every time and place, according to the situation, as our fathers, forefathers, and masters did in all the communities of the Jewish people. And today, today's women are like men. They are independent, they can work, they can sustain and provide for themselves. There are many women who are wealthy. The women bring their own dowry into the wedding. They don't need it from their parents, and they help at the house with bringing income or bringing a big dowry. And even though there are few women who are not there yet, מעט מזער ממנות הארץ אשר לא באו בגדר זה, הלא אמרה תורה אחר רבים להטות. We have to follow the majority. לעשות תיקון ישר בהשגחה עלינו לטובת הרוב. We must do something that will benefit the majority. אם כן, למה ניגרע מכוח הנשים? If that is so, where the women say, in the language that they borrow from בנות צלופחד, who demanded an inheritance in Eretz Israel. They say, why should we be lesser than men? And therefore they claim, please give us our inheritance. And Rabbi Yoshua Maman, I think passed away recently, last week maybe, Shavat of Tafshin Ayin Het. He says, "Uvemishpat hatakana hadasha hanal." So finally, they made the takana and they applied it to Morocco. Mat'ima leruach hayom. It fits the new spirit of today. Asher ruach hachofesh gavar. Now we have the spirit of wisdom. V'chovat batei adin lid'og letzarat habat. It is mandatory for the batei din to take care of the suffering of that daughter and give her an equal portion among the men, so she could live independently, and limtzochen b'nei bachurim, and when necessary, to get married. So with that, we conclude also our discussion of the Responsa. There's much more material that has to do with women's status in Sephardic halacha, in non-Sephardic halacha. I hope that our discussion, our discourse, will serve as a catalyst and an encouragement to go and read more in depth on all these issues. Thank you.